Hello, I have a special treat for you here. I'm Gabriella Taylor, and today I have one of my aunties, as I like to call women that I gather that have really been way showers and, shown really bright, courageous lights in our world. And so today I'm thrilled to be with Diane Cirincione Jampolsky. And if you don't know who she is, I am so delighted to introduce you to her wisdom and the range of impact that she has had in her life here on this planet. And if you do know her, then cozy up and may you enjoy this conversation. So I would like to formally share a bit about Diane. So Diane has committed the last 40 plus years to helping to make attitudinal healing accessible around the world in all aspects of life, to support people of all ages to learn to make their healthiest choices in changing and challenging life circumstances. She holds a BS in organizational behavior, she holds a master's in counseling psychology, and she holds a PhD in clinical psychology. She serves as president of the Jampolsky Outreach Foundation, a nonprofit foundation that supports culturally appropriate adaptations of attitudinal healing worldwide. In addition to being a clinical psychologist in private practice, Dr. Cirincione is founder and executive director of Attitudinal Healing International, mentoring dozens of independent, culturally adapted centers for attitudinal healing on 6 continents. Also, she is a private entrepreneur, an international lecturer. There's this new, I have this new oral appliance, as many of you know. So I'm still stumbling on some of my words. So if you hear me stumble a little bit, that's what that is. So, anyhow, she's an international lecturer and she's the author and co author of books in multiple languages. She's lead director for the pioneering hydrogen company H2 Clipper, as well as a member of the board of directors on the Unstoppable Foundation, which Cynthia Kersey is one of my dearest soul center sisters, and that's how we bonded. And Diane serves on the board of Unstoppable, as Cynthia is the founder of Unstoppable, and she also serves on the board for the California Institute of Integral Science Studies. She has been invited to and worked in 61 countries and lectured in medical schools, universities, and organizations around the world in partnership with Dr. Gerald Jampolsky, which I read one of Jerry's books. I got it out of the library when I was like a teenager or something like that. So with Dr. Gerald Jampolsky, which her spouse and partner of 40 years, and the founder of Attitudinal Healing. Together, they have written numerous books and received a wide range of international awards for their humanitarian work. So welcome, Diane.
Thank you, Gabriella. It's a joy to be with you.
And today, so one of the many reasons why I was so thrilled to come together is because one of the biggest things that I'm standing for and committed to, and you have really been a way shower for, is the evolution of consciousness on the planet, specifically the evolution of the feminine consciousness. And Diane, what does that mean for you?
Well, I like that you say for me because everyone has a different idea of consciousness, and we want to honor all of those. I mean, for me, if I think of feminine consciousness, I also have to think of what we consider masculine consciousness. They're two opposing but kind of complementary forces that exist within all people. To me, they're not limited to gender, and they're considered to be equally significant in both men and women. But the world says that masculine consciousness is like it's associated and attributed to like doing, achieving, logic, reason, strength, action, assertiveness, independence, problem solving, groundedness, protectiveness, and competitiveness, and interestingly enough, in some definitions, light, as
Mm,
opposed to feminine, associated with being, these are the stereotypes, with, of course, being intuitive, receiving, allowing, nurturing, creativity, emotional intelligence, empathy, flexibility, and tenderness. And some say darkness. So, I personally, I am not accepting in the feminine definition alone because I love achieving and logic and reason. And I love strength and action and assertiveness and independence and problem solving and groundedness and protectiveness. I'm
Mm.
not necessarily competitive, but that's just one aspect of me. I So for me, I hold all of that in me, and it's taken me, decades and decades and decades to get there
Mm.
because I think, certainly defined culturally by the more feminine ones that I mentioned. Some people think that these energies are balanced, part of the greater sense of harmony and fulfillment within us. Um, Others say that our perceptions are important and necessary for us to evolve both or one of these in our psychological development. For me, I mean, I don't know, Gabrielle, if you've ever been called like dominant or intimidating or bossy or outspoken, and how these
Demanding. I hear demanding. Ask my
demanding.
husband.
Yeah, well, no, I know your husband. No, I'm not going to. He's a doll. No, so
But
is mine.
demanding. I'm very assertive, and
Well,
so
of course
I
you are.
notice that it gets misinterpreted as demanding when it's
It
really I'm just clear.
it absolutely does. And culturally, I was listening to a song on the radio this morning, coming from swimming early this morning. It's a tape that friends made years ago, and it had an old song which you're much too young to remember, but it says, "I have a brand new pair of roller skates," and it's a cute children's song. But I noticed in the song, which I heard for years, it said, um, I've traveled all around the world, like on a bicycle, right? And some people say I've done all right for a girl. And I thought, wait a minute. We have so many things that are programmed, into us. Um,
So what I'm hearing you say is that there's a pejorative right there, as if I've done as all right, given that I'm a girl. Is that what
Even that I'm a girl, and yes, the limitations of that. There's so many stigmas in our social norms,
I'm
and like so many things in life, we live by the rules that society sets for us until we change them.
Yes.
We're ever told men are masculine, women are feminine. What about the women that want to be masculine and men that want to be feminine? What about those that want to cross over? And this younger generation has helped us so much. I mean, my generation, I'm from a kid from the 50s and 60s and 70s. I mean, we did a lot of consciousness raising. And yeah, and I look at the young people today and they're going, no, I don't want to be defined that way. So it's a complex subject. I think if we learn to embrace the balance of that within ourselves, whatever way that looks, whether it's predominantly on one side, predominantly on another, um, I think our happiness with ourselves is what will make us successful in the world, and will allow our consciousness to evolve.
Mm.
And I think, historically, there's great women in history: Catherine the Great, Joan of Arc, the Empress of China. My middle name is Victoria, named after Queen Victoria, my great grandmother and grandmother were named that because she was the most powerful woman in the world at the
Mm.
time. And I love the fact that they named me for her. There's so many amazing women in history. Look at Joan of Arc. She raised the armies in France. Of course, they burned her at the stake. We must also note that it's been a scary and kind of frightening journey to evolve our consciousness in the world, and yet we continue to do it.
So let's break down a couple of things that you've said because you've hit several very rich points. So if I'm hearing you, there's this beautiful, you just sort of gave us a wonderful sort of layout of how feminine energies and masculine energies or polarities or however we want to call it, but how they manifest in men or women, and there are qualities that are attributed to them. And we also recognize that to the degree that these qualities are alive in us or dormant in us will affect our overall happiness. And I think a lot, and I'd love your thoughts. I think a lot about what I call the Western feminine psyche. Like
Mm,
when I think back on what the that poignant statement that the Dalai Lama gave at the Vancouver Peace Summit in 2007, where he made a statement how Western women will save the world. And when I first heard that, I felt completely filled with this resonance of yes, like we are being called forward, the feminine, to balance things. But then my next thought was, oh my God, we're not ready. I mean, look at how many of us women struggle with the beauty myth and body image issues, how we struggle with relationships, either being alone or tolerating mistreatment, whether it's romantic relationships or work relationships, or how we struggle with money and having a sense of purpose in our vocation and also our earning capacity. And so I look at these areas where our Western sisters are really where we typically where we lose a lot of power and where we may not psychologically be ready to quote unquote save the world, as the Dalai Lama said. And so I find that I have a very unique sort of draw towards how do we support changing, shifting, and reshaping the Western feminine psyche so that we are able to take the lead from a place of these balanced energies. And so for you, as a being a clinical psychologist and a doctor of psychology for many, many years, what's your take on the Western feminine psyche? That's what I call it. What do you call it, or what's your take on
feminine psyche. I love that. Well, I think back also when Vivekananda,
it?
in the late 1800s, who actually first said that, and I think I know he inspired His Holiness, that it is women of the West, and he was saying predominantly America, which would also lead us to a new era of enlightenment and an evolution of consciousness. And I, being a psychologist, I know that the origins of psychology were also help the origins of advertising and
Mhm.
how easy it is to sell people on what you want to sell them on. You just
Mhm.
have to look at the propagation around the world of information in this country as well as everywhere else. I worked in a lot of communist countries. I worked in many places. And I'm always interested in how propaganda, being the propagation of information, goes out to people. And it's so easy to make people feel good or bad about themselves. And to
Mhm.
make women feel badly about themselves is like us running off to the cosmetic counter, and it has been just a barrage in the last decades, last half century, really, about where we have so many more influences in our
Mhm.
lives, not just the local community or whatever, that tell us we are not good enough.
That I have never made that connection before, so I wanna just slow that down a little bit because I've often reflected how, I look through the lens of the feminine brain, and how the feminine brain shapes the feminine psyche, and then also the feminine spirit, like what it is that is seeking to emerge through us as divine beings having human experiences.
Mhm.
And when I look at a lot of the spiritual traditions, a lot of men are the figureheads behind the contemporary spiritual traditions that we know today. And when I look at a lot of the, modern psychology's only been around for what, 150 years or something. Mostly men were the developers of. And so I sense that women have been lacking in getting the guidance we need psychologically, neurobiologically, and in even understanding our bodies and spiritually. And so what you just said, connecting the origins of psychology with marketing and how it has been strategically used deliberately Like, we think a lot about, or I think a lot, I've been doing some work with women in the White House leading up to the election, and there's this conversation around psychological warfare and how that's being used in the Trump administration right now, using bullying tactics and hatred tactics, but it's very strategic psychological warfare. So what I'm
Yeah,
hearing you say, there's the strategic psychological mass manipulation through marketing to pervert and corrupt how we feel about ourselves. And I've
yeah.
never heard those dots connected before.
It's very, very effective. And of course, consciousness does not evolve when greed is the goal.
Mhm. Mm,
And greed is I mean, there's nothing wrong with making money. I mean, I've had 4 companies myself. I mean, I understand that. But if that's the only goal that you have, and at any price, at what price are we willing to sell out, ourselves in order to get what we think we need to be safe?
mm,
And
mm,
that the the goal of just amassing and basically run by greed basically negates evolution of consciousness.
mhm.
Uh,
Yes.
if one has the evolution of consciousness, their own, as well as the planets, it can really only be your own, as your higher goal, then that's a guiding principle for you. It's kind of like the evolution of consciousness is a personal decision we make, sometimes unconsciously, but usually by experiences or choices. And I'll give you an example. Um, about 45 years ago, my beloved husband and I, we were like in our second, almost third year together. And he said something to me. And he said, if I give you my heart, will you hold it gently? And I thought, oh my God, this man is like offering me his life.
Mhm.
And I thought about it and I said, yes, I would. And then I asked him in return. And he said, yes. And then this is an evolutionary point. I wasn't planning on saying this, but I'm going to share it with you. Because our life is made up of moments. And this moment, what I said to Jerry was, I said, Jerry, if you and I are going to hold each other's hearts gently and be committed to each other, then we are going to be vulnerable to each other. And you and I have the gift of words. We have been given that. We have the ability to help or heal each other, to love or heal or hurt each other. I said, would you be willing? I don't know where this came from, but would you be willing to make a vow with me right now for the rest of our lives that we will never use words as weapons, either to each other, to another human being, or ourselves?
Mm.
And Jerry made the vow with me. And in 40 years, we never had a sentence that we broke the vow. I'll tell you why. Because we had that as a goal in our evolution of consciousness. It's not like we thought we wouldn't forget it or whatever, but every single morning when we woke up and we greeted the morning with a prayer that we created together, in that prayer, it said, today, I will not use words as weapons.
Mm,
Every day we had to remind ourselves.
mm,
And that's why we didn't break it. And that to me was an evolution in both of our consciousness, whether you want to define it male, female, combination of, or whatever. But
mm,
it was so powerful that I realized that, oh, I can change and evolve any part of myself if I am committed enough to it.
mm,
And it doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean I forget. It just
mm,
so happened we never forgot that. Not one
mm,
sentence. And we spent 95% of our life
mm,
together in the same space, working
mm,
together on stage, etc. But it showed me the power of what you can do. We're just like people. Anybody can do it if you put your mind to it. So in that sense, I think that we can overcome the things that we identify, like in other words, not feeling good enough. You know, I was raised in an era where the feminine voice was just emerging at a whole other level. There's a wonderful book, Women's Ways of Knowing, which I recommend to every male and female I know. It's a fabulous book, and it's about the stages of voice. And the stages of voice, I think, Gabriella, parallel the stages of consciousness that we have. Because it starts out with, I don't know anything. Everybody else knows more than me. Everyone else is the expert. I'm nothing. And it goes all the way into the stage of, I know my truth. I listen to others' truths. I blend them together. I find my own consciousness, my own way, and respecting others. It's a fabulous book. It's simple to read and very, very meaningful. I read it back in graduate school and I went, oh my God, because you can find yourself on the scale of where your voice is. And that's great. You don't need to be here or here. You just, oh, there I am. Oh, I can aspire to more. That's an evolution of consciousness. I think it happens in our daily actions, our daily activities.
And what would you say growing up as an American woman in a female body at a time when you and we have been relegated as second class citizens? I mean, I think it was in was it Webster's dictionary? And forgive me if it was not that, but one of the major dictionaries up until the 90s, the th- the word feminine was synonymous with weak.
Right.
So not that long ago, we're talking about the antiquated cultural norms that undervalue women are everywhere. And we're only now just becoming aware of them. So you grew up at a time where it wasn't okay for a woman to have a voice. Here you've said you've had 4 companies, you have created a body of work that has transformed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And what are some of the things that you've needed to evolve inside of you in your own feminine consciousness as it relates to having a voice or speaking up or standing up or walking away, or some of the things that we see where women are evolving around what we tolerate, what we take on, what we say yes or no to. What has been some of your personal growth in that area in terms of what you were conditioned to be in terms of how you are today?
That's a great question. And I think it's a question for everyone to really ask
Mm.
herself.
Yeah.
She comes to know herself, to know thyself
Mhm.
better. Yeah, I grew up in an era where I had a dominant father. I come from an Italian American family, 98.8% Italian. And so we're vocal people, we're verbal people, but yet in a dominant household where the male was dominant, I didn't even remotely cross my mind to be to counter the authority in the house. And so I think well until into my 20s where for lots of reasons, I can give you lots of stories, but that I did not really have my own voice.
Mm.
I developed a lot of skills, etc., but I didn't have my own voice. And I remember when I went cross country, I wanted to get a credit card. I couldn't get a credit card unless my father signed it or my husband. My father had just died and I didn't have a husband. I
Mhm.
was like, so this is a stage. Then I went into anger. I went
Mm.
into furious. I went into reaction. Like, what? This is like insane because I hadn't even tried to do it. And there were so many things like that in that era. And that's what, Betty Friedan, and I mean the women's movement, we really had so much work that we did. And I think that stage of anger and then rebellion against it, also it mixes in with your feelings about uh, 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 anger maybe against men in general until you figure it all out and you do your own work. I mean, most of us go into the field of mental health to figure out our own lives. They say social workers and nurses, we all go into, all of this to figure it out ourselves. My husband, who's a renowned psychiatrist, said, oh, honey, I just thought I was crazy. And I just wanted to figure it all out myself. So I think that these stages are all a part of growth and everyone has different stages. And for me, I so appreciate at this latter part in life, all of those stages I went through. I am
Mhm.
so glad that I learned. My mother used to say, she said, I had an incredible mother and I learned so much from her. And she said, honey, she said, when things happen in life as you didn't plan them, she said, it doesn't mean you don't counter them or work for them. She said, but if you don't judge them as
Mhm.
either a good thing or bad thing for you, and you know that you're going to learn from them, you'll be a happy person. And it's amazing. I took on that philosophy and I thought, okay, I can work intensely for causes and still, have my own peace of mind inside. I
Mhm.
remember doing a workshop for Helen Caldicott, one of my old dear friends, mother of the nuclear disarmament movement, um, who recruited, thousands of physicians for social responsibility. She asked me to do a workshop for women in the peace movement and the anti-nuclear movement, which was the big threat when I was younger. Um, and uh, the biggest difference I found in the people in the audience, the ones that were burned out versus the ones that were still going, was that those that were burned out were so attached to the anger of the failure of what was happening that they couldn't get out of it. So a lot of it is an attitudinal shift in saying, okay, what do I need to think and say and do about, redirecting here? And those that who could figure a way to move forward into being open to another way of accomplishing whatever they want, they didn't burn out. And so it's really it was a powerful lesson for me to see the difference, and it was so obvious. And
Mhm.
so I'd have to take that for myself and say, it's the consciousness you have, Diane, as you're going through life and the changes and the all of the different work. I mean, working with people with life-threatening illnesses, watching children die, being in war zones, and people ask about our travels. I mean, a chunk of our travels were not to see the green hills of Ireland, but in Belfast during the war when things were getting blown up. So how do you continue to evolve in your own consciousness? Is by not getting caught in, not that you don't experience it, but you don't get caught in the anger and the grievances. You keep on moving forward and say, there's always another way. There's a way for me and for others to find it, and to respect other people's experiences.
And I love what you're saying because I feel that that is where we stand as the evolution of consciousness, whether it's the evolution of consciousness of the feminine or just bringing the feminine energies into how we heal and transform. And when I say the feminine, I mean including our bodies, our brains, and our emotional nature, because I know I spent years in spiritual communities trying to will myself to like have a transformation in consciousness. And that was just one part, sitting in meditation for hours and days on end
Mhm.
in ashrams and monasteries. And for me, I needed more than just a place to pray or meditate. And then that's how I got into the world of psychology, was then through the process of like, okay, well, if I can psychologically, orient myself to like what my patterns are and kind of understand the matrix, that my ego structure has developed, then I shall know peace. And I just found that for probably 20 years in both of those respective areas, there was something I couldn't reconcile. And then for me, it was through my brother's tragic car accident 12 years ago where he had a traumatic brain injury, where I even started thinking about the brain and how our brains and nervous systems have been shaped around the things that have happened to us
Mhm.
personally, individually, and collectively. And so some of the beautiful things that I hear you saying, I'm also reflecting on where I believe where we're evolving in consciousness is around that, yes, some of us, if we grew up in an environment where where our needs were met enough, where there was enough stability, if there was enough attunement, then maybe our nervous systems and our brains were able to shape in a way that let us kind of implicitly know that, "Oh, I belong, I'm not alone, and there's safety with me." And then
Mm.
there were those of us that grew up with more overt abuse or violation against our bodies, and our brains didn't receive those messages of, "I'm not alone and people are with me." And then what I found is that really shapes our capacity, our ability, like, I think of what you were saying with a little bit of, envy of how you and Jerry made this proclamation and dedication 45 years ago in your marriage, and as you were saying that, I'm thinking, "Wow, I'm assuming that neither of them had a trauma history."
Oh, no, that's true.
That's what was happening in my brain, though, that, because I worked I for years, I was really focalized as a relationship specialist, so sat with, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of couples, and also have been in dedicated couples therapy with my own husband, and we both have trauma histories, and I see how, as much as our conscious selves may seek to make an agreement like that, there's big parts of us that aren't quite, capable when threat arises, when the feeling of aloneness arises. So when I heard you, and so it sounds your experience was different, but more when I'm thinking of the evolution of consciousness, some of us do have the ability to have the agency to decide, okay, I'm going to speak up. I'm going to step up. I'm going to like have peace in the marital home. I'm going to like some of us can do that. And then there are other of us, myself more, I'm speaking of in the purview that I sort of have around this, where I struggling with emotional regulation has been a big thing for me. Struggling with helping my brain, understanding my brain as to when my brain gets hijacked by fear and how it actually, our frontal lobe goes offline when the midbrain and the lower brain is hijacked by fear. And I've had a lot of autonomic dysregulation where
Mm.
my nervous system perceives threat, real or imagined, which has prohibited my own capacity, and I've seen this in a lot of women, to simply, like, make a decision to, choose to speak up or choose to take care of myself or choose peace at home, and I just where I see where we're going, and I'm curious, about your thoughts on this, is the conversation needs to include why we get stuck in anger, for example, is because we haven't had the support that we've needed to move through it. Why we get stuck in aloneness or what's called victimization, which is
Mm.
used as an insult these days, is because we haven't had the support that we've needed to move through it. So I'm very thrilled by creating a world where we have the support we need no matter how our brain is, no matter how our psyche is, the support that we need to truly access the best parts of ourselves. And do you have thoughts on this as it relates to the evolution of human consciousness or feminine consciousness?
I do, and I think that trauma informed lives, which both Jerry and I did have. Even my PhD specialization
Mm.
is domestic violence. I didn't pick it out of the air. Okay,
Oh,
so I grew up in it, and my Jerry was severely dyslexic when there was no need for it. He
mm,
just felt like he was stupid when he was left back in kindergarten, and and he just like got to stab her by the skin of my teeth, and
mm.
professor said to him, "For whatever you're going to do in life, for God's sakes, Jemples, you don't ever try to write a book."
Wow.
Yeah,
Looking at
I
the
think we're way
laugh.
past 10 million at this point. But he was waited till he was 50, and he became an alcoholic in between because it was so traumatic for him. He was a great psychiatrist working with alcoholics, but he was
Mm,
a full-blown alcoholic until he was 50 when he
mm,
had a transformation, and then he wrote his first book. So I'm saying that no, I think because we had trauma,
mm,
because we had it, doesn't mean we didn't have limitations. It
mm,
just by the time that we made this commitment, Jerry was 21 years older than me. So when we made this commitment, I was about 37, Jerry was about 58. And we
mhm.
had been around the block a bit.
Mm, mhm.
Um,
Yes. I
and
so appreciate that there's a maturity that comes into our own inner being, when we let ourselves grow in it, or when we have the ability to grow and evolve, there is a maturity and a knowing of oneself that
yeah, and if you're lucky enough. And I certainly consider it grace and luck that I was able to do it with another human being. I certainly couldn't have done the same growth if I
Mhm.
didn't have that relationship with Jerry, but we each had our own stuff. And so we
Mhm.
were acutely aware
Mhm.
of where the pitfalls were. We were
Mhm.
also aware of the gifts that we were given. And one of those was the voice and words. I just gave a
Mhm.
talk last Thursday, actually, for the attitudinal healing training. And we do it half of the year is in one part of the world. I mean, the second half of the year we do it. This was Asia, Africa, Europe, and Pakistan. And it was they asked me to talk about the power of communication, and so I talked about words and how
Mhm.
we use them,
Yes,
consciousness. So I know it's like a big deal for me. I
yes.
believe that as was said, when much is given to you, much is expected in return. And he and I both have that ability to be able to communicate in that way. So it was to serve. We use it to serve, not to
Mhm.
hurt, but
Mhm.
only to heal. And
Mhm.
that's why we were able to keep that commitment. It didn't come easily, and it wasn't because it was just a nice idea. We had this vanilla life, and we were able to do it. Oh no, oh no, that's what made it even so much more magnificent. I mean, I didn't really realize until it was kind of like all over that it was like, oh my God, I don't remember a sentence where we did that with you. We were like, if you're around us, we were like, people would go, oh my God, you two are like so honest. You're like so, we're right there with each other, but you're so loving when you do it. So it was something we developed. It worked for us.
Yeah.
But we both had a lot of trauma when we were younger. Some have had a lot more than us, some a
Mhm.
lot less. And
Mhm.
so I think that what is it?
Mhm.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And
Mhm.
we are lucky enough. And I happen to believe in multiple lives. And I figured, well, somebody's not doing this life, they'll do it in the next one. It's like, I try to not have a script for anybody else,
Mhm.
anyone else, not my clients, not for my husband, not even for myself, because it's like, we're all doing the best we can with what we have.
Mhm.
And sometimes when somebody does something, someone you love or someone you know, someone you don't know, you it's easy to have a script for them.
Mhm.
And I try to tear up my script
Mhm.
for it. And I tell my clients at the very first beginning of our sessions, I'll go, by the way, I don't have a script for you, for your healing. I says, because let me tell you, I'm good enough. I can manipulate you enough to get you to fulfill the script I have for you. And then I feel really good, but what's that going to do for you? I said, nope, that's not it. I'm not going to have a script for you. I don't know what's best for you, but I will help you find what's best for you by your own journey.
Mhm.
So I think that's consciousness. Everyone that has the courage to go into therapy with someone or coaching is they want to grow.
Mhm.
Wow, good for you. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of courage to change where you're at
Mhm. Yes.
without making the rest of the world wrong.
Mhm.
Knowing
Yeah.
that everybody's just kind of like, no matter even the person that is extremely different than us, the
Mhm.
person that is so very, very different. And I think that for me, it's taken one by one, each of the situations in life where I find resistance or judgment or whatever, to work with each one of those things. And it's not easy. And at times I forget, but I keep on doing it because that's my evolution of consciousness. And isn't there only one consciousness that we're all kind of a part of?
Mhm. I am continue just to be moved by that kernel of light within you. And I believe that's in every single one of us, whether it's, sort of under, maybe a dusty or it's burning a small flame. But like I just really experience the luminosity of your inner light because you've tended to it so faithfully for your life. You shine such a bright light. And when you were sharing that about Jerry, it was I did some of my formative training years ago with Carolyn Mace, who has
Wonderful.
a lot of work in multiple ways, but one things that she talks about is sacred contracts,
Mhm.
souls that we come in
Oh,
to have a sacred contract with to support us in our growth. That may be through sandpapering, or it may be by becoming these loving sanctuaries for each other, or it may be a combination of both. And so I'm just very moved by the depth of the sacred contract of what you and Jerry came together to have also as emissaries in terms of what you both created. I mean, really, your lives and your life continues to be a demonstration of being in service to the greatest good. And I mean, you are just such a beautiful human and beautiful woman, Diane. And I'm just so grateful that you exist here. And as we start to wrap up, I'm curious if you had one um, message that you would like to offer to a woman here that is very drawn to evolving in her feminine consciousness or the consciousness of the feminine, or however, in your words, it would be. Is there anything in particular that you would like to share with her?
I'd like to share that don't take anybody's definition
Mm,
of anything.
mm,
Feminine consciousness, masculine consciousness, evolution of consciousness. Find your own authentic self.
mm,
Have the courage to know the light that you are. The You came here. You evolved to this point for a reason. And if you match together your own journey, your own intentionality, your own evolution, it will bring you your happiness. And in your happiness, it will really speak to all those other things. To
mm,
find your most authentic self, no matter how you live it in this world, have the courage to be it, to speak it, and also hopefully have the respect that while others' journeys might be incredibly foreign to you or you foreign to them, understand that that's their journey. And having worked in so many countries, Gabriella, and so many, in the Middle East and Africa and Asia, South America, all over, I see that on the surface, the journey looks very different. And theologically, it might look different. And politically, it might look different. But at a core level, we Homo sapiens, we don't know where we're going, but we're sure not lost.
mm, mm, mm. I was just moved by what you were sharing. I mean, I've lived in 37 countries around the world, so I have a felt sense of what it's like to be in some of these places that you've mentioned, myself as a female. And there's something about the resiliency of the human spirit. And when you were talking, I was just imagining all of the lives and hearts that you've touched and that you've personally looked into their eyes or seen the smiles on the faces because of what your work has offered to them in terms of bringing a level of being seen and a new possibility for life to so many of our fellow brothers and sisters around the world. And I just, bless you, Diane, for the way that you live life so lightly and you bring so much light with you. And the reach of your light has been so and continues to be so expansive. And what I hear you saying is that it's an invitation, it's a call to action for all of us.
Yep.
We all have the ability to rise up inside of ourselves in our authentic selves and be the light that we're here to be, no matter what the arena or venue or, in our own home, our neighborhood, our community, or the global stage. So thank you for being such a beautiful human being. So grateful to be here with you. And any closing thoughts before we wrap up here?
I was thinking of the thought. Thank you for that, Gabriella. You're very dear. I remember Jerry and I did an interview one time, and the person was saying, "What would you like your legacy to be?" And Jerry looked at me, and I looked at him, and we go, "I don't really care. It doesn't make any difference. Legacy's like all made up. It's just like fame's kind of like made up, right?" I said, "This is the only moment there is, because my guidance has always been keep moving forward, find
Mhm.
ways to serve, never look back, never meditate."
Mm.
It's like
Wow.
whatever it is that's in somebody's heart, that's truly it. But I was thinking of the thought that, when we're young and we're sort of inspired, and we're out in the world, and and working in China and Russia and all these places, and you want to like change the world and make the world more peaceful, and I mean, I know now that I can't change the world, that I can't make the world more peaceful, but I know I can change my own mind, and I know I can be more peaceful and be the peace I want to bring to the world. That I know, and that was an evolution of consciousness for me.
Mm, beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for your exampleship for all of us, Diane.
Mhm. Thank you, Gabriella, for who you are, what you do, what you bring to the world. We love you dearly.
Oh, it's mutual.